Hello everyone, this is Himanshu Chandra from Adhyayan IT Solutions. This is the second part of the demo lecture on QTP. We are going to go into detail into the object repository of QTP. For that purpose, we'll be creating a very simple web page and trying to see how QTP tries to recognize the objects on the web page. So, I opened a text editor. You can use Notepad or Notepad++. I prefer to use Notepad++. You can download it over the net if you want to. This is open source. What I have written is a simple HTML tag and then closed it, and we'll write a text inside it. We'll save it. The extension should be .html. You can give whatever file name you want to give, and then you can double click the file to open it in a browser. This is our simple HTML page. Now let's write some code inside it. I'm going to create input boxes inside it. If I do this and refresh this page, an input box comes here. Let's add a few more. I'll just copy paste this a couple of times. So we have 4 input boxes. These are the 4 input boxes. Let's see how QTP recognizes these. I'll open a new test in QTP. I'll go into resources. I'll go into object repository. I'll click on the add objects to local button, and I'll add this. I'll click on the first input box. So QTP has added the browser and the page. I have added all the 4 objects now, quickly to save some time. And these are the web edits, or the edit boxes, or the input boxes which it found on the screen. Now you can see here the properties which QTP used to recognize these edit boxes is type, HTML tag, and class. This is because we configured these settings in the first part of the demo video. Those who have not seen the previous demo lecture, I would advise them to please go ahead and watch the first one. That is necessary for understanding this. So, type, HTML tag, and class. Since our input boxes have no class defined, this is blank. Once again, all our edit boxes are exactly identical in terms of structure. That is why QTP is trying to differentiate between them based on index. For the purpose of this exercise, we'll do enable smart identification is equal to false. What this means, we'll be explaining later. For the time being, just change them all to false. So now, the only differentiating factor is the index. This is index 0 for the first edit box, this is index 1, this is index 2, and this is index 3. That is because everything else is same on the page. This is the first, second, third, and fourth box. Now, let's add some properties. I'll add class property here. I'll refresh the page. I'll make sure by inspecting the element, right click on the box and inspect element. And I'll make sure the class property is there. It's there. Let's go into QTP once again. I'll remove this object, the first edit box. You can click here, delete, and I'll add it again. If you see, the class property has been added here. So now the index value is automatically not there because QTP can uniquely identify the object now. Now let's try something else. We see that whatever might be the properties of the object, in case of an input box, QTP always try to identify it based on type, HTML tag and class, because those are the settings we provided. Let's see the page. If I give the class of the second edit box as class 1, 2, then QTP will have to use index now, because both these objects have exactly the same property. Let's refresh the browser. Both these objects are exactly the same now. And if I add that, let's remove this, let's remove this, and if I add those two objects now, you see, once again, index has been used by QTP because there is nothing apart from index to identify between these two objects, right? So I'll change some property. Type is one of the description properties which is used by QTP in our case. As you can see here, type under description properties. So I can make use of that. I'll change this to password. What this does is, changes the type. That's all it does. So if I add this now, index should not be required. This is the first one. This is the second one. So you can see the combination of these three properties is unique now. So index is not used. The combination should always be unique. So password plus input plus class 1, and this is text plus input plus class 1. Description properties, whatever you see here, this combination has to be unique. So this works fine. Now let's take another scenario. I know that on most occasions, these are the only properties which will be present inside an input box: type and class. And this will work for 90% of the occasions. We do not need to use any other properties. If we create a combination of these, it will be unique. For this purpose, I had given class is equal to class 1 and class 1, but normally I know that these will be different. But just suppose these are the same in our application and there are some extra properties. Let's say name is equal to name1. Name is equal to name2. I'm going to change this back to text type. Let's see what happens on the page. So all the properties are the same except the fact that their names are different. Now if I add these in QTP, will QTP pick up the name property? No, it does not. It uses IntelliSense to decide what the name of the object will be, and it says it will be name1 and name2, but the properties are still the same: type, HTML tag, and class, which are exactly the same for both the objects. Now, how do you handle such a case? How do you say QTP that if these are conflicting, these properties are the same between two objects and you are not able to uniquely identify an object, use some other property? There must be a way to do that. And yes, there is. Close the object repository, go into Tools, go into Object Identification. We came to this screen in our first demo lecture. We are working on a web-based application, so click on Environment Web. Web Edit is the type of object we are trying to handle here. So go to Web Edit. We had mandatory properties and assistive properties here. Last time we had changed this and we had added class here. Now pay close attention here. Mandatory properties and assistive properties. These are the two types of properties which initially QTP tries to pick up for an object. Here we see that in our settings, mandatory properties are class, HTML tag, and type. And that is what we are seeing continuously in the object repository when we add an object. Assistive properties are blank. What we can do is add and remove properties here too. Let's say I want to add a name. Okay. So it is added. Let's suppose I'll also add another property, placeholder. Okay. If you see, I can change the order here. If I click here, these buttons enable or disable. I can change the order. I can say placeholder is the first property, name is the second property. For the time being, I'll keep this order, name and placeholder. Okay. Here in mandatory properties, there is no such up and down arrow button. You cannot change the order. There is a reason for this. Whenever you try to add an object into a repository, the first thing which QTP does is goes into these settings and looks what mandatory properties did you tell it to recognize the object from. Suppose you had said class, HTML tag, and type. This combination of three properties will be treated as a single unit. It does not matter whether an object has a class property or not, has a HTML tag property or not, has a type property or not. QTP will force itself to use these three properties to recognize the object. The combination of class plus HTML tag plus type. This is always a single unit. All three properties will be used. Whatever you write, if you write 5 properties here, all 5 of those will be used at once. And it will try to check what those 5 properties are. Some may be blank, some may have some value, but all will be used. Now, if that is sufficient to recognize the object, then QTP stops there. It will say I can uniquely identify that object. Please note here that unique identification is necessary. So QTP always tries to create a unique identification. Suppose it finds that there are 2 edit boxes on the screen which have the same class, which has the same HTML tag and the same type. Then it goes into this assistive properties. It tries to pick up the first assistive property which you have given, name. So what it does is tries to create a combination class plus HTML tag plus type plus name. Here assistive properties are not treated as a unit, as a combination, as a whole. They are accessed one after the another, and that is why you give the index. First try name. So class plus HTML tag plus type plus name, is that a unique combination? If yes, QTP stops. If not, then it tries the second property also. So it will try class plus HTML tag plus type plus name plus placeholder. All the 5 properties. If that is unique, well and fine. I am going to disable smart identification from here itself so that I do not have to do it again and again in the object repository. Once again, smart identification is something we'll cover later, not in this video lecture. Let's say OK. Let's go to object repository. We'll delete these 2 objects and we'll add. If you see, type, HTML tag and class was used as the last time, but this assistive property was also used because QTP realized that on the page I can uniquely identify between this edit box and this edit box based on the property of name, which was mentioned as the first assistive property in our case. If you add the second object, the same thing will happen. The name property will be used. Now, let's do something. Let's go here. Now the second and the third edit box are exactly the same. Let's refresh the page. I'll remove all the objects and then we'll add. Let's add the first one. No problem here. The combination of these 4 properties is unique on the page. If you see in the code, text plus class plus the input tag plus name, this is unique, does not appear anywhere on the page again. So that is unique and can be used to identify the object. So no problem there. Let's add the second input box. Now I am sure you must have guessed index will come here. It does. Let's add both. See what QTP did. When I added this, it also tried to pick up the placeholder property. Why was that? Because type plus class plus HTML tag, those are the mandatory properties. We are not unique. Then it tried plus name. That was name 2. Now that same property was shared by the third input box also, the same name. So that was not unique. So it tried the second assistive property which we had mentioned, placeholder, which was blank, but QTP had to try it because we had mentioned it in the assistive property list. It did the same for the third edit box. It tried a unique combination by using placeholder also, because if it only used name, that was not unique. However, in spite of using placeholder, it was not unique. the combination of all the 5 properties is still the same for both the objects. So it had to use index. It went into ordinal identifier. How could we have avoided this? Let's suppose this was something like I'll add the placeholder property in the third input box. If you see, the placeholder property basically gives you a default text here. So this is the web page. Now, if I simply add the second one, I do not need to go to the third edit box yet. I am adding the second one. But when you are adding an object on screen, QTP basically tries to identify it uniquely by going through the properties of everything on the page. So even if you have not clicked on the third one, it knows that the placeholder property for the second edit box is unique. It knows that there is a third edit box, but the placeholder property for that is equal to third. This is blank, that is third. So the combination of this is unique because this is class 1 plus input plus name2 plus text plus blank. QTP knows that the third edit box on screen will be class 1 plus input plus name2 plus text plus third. So the combination of these 5 will be unique. Now if you add the third one, it will use the third property. No index is used because QTP knows that the combination is unique. This is how you use mandatory and assistive properties. You could have used 5, 6, 7 properties in assistive. Now a common question people ask me, why did I put this in assistive? I could have put the placeholder and the name property in mandatory itself, and all this could have been avoided. Now try to understand, this is all about performance. QTP initially is going to try only the mandatory properties. If your application is something where most of the edit boxes have a unique class, why do you want QTP to pick up placeholder as well as name property? There is no need for that. Mandatory properties are treated as a unit. They will always be picked up by QTP. If you had given placeholder and name property inside the mandatory properties, it would pick them up. So even if 9 out of 10 edit boxes on your application have a unique class, QTP will still try to pick up the placeholder and the name property. That degrades the performance. That is not really required. That also makes your repository a bit big. Tomorrow if you have to change properties or edit, you will have to make sure that all the 5 properties are in place. So let's keep only 3. You know that only in one edit box or maybe in 2 edit boxes, this conflict may arise, that the class is not unique. And then developer must have given the name property or the placeholder property to uniquely identify that. So you put that in the assistive property section. First you use name because you know that that is more important and that might be able to uniquely identify it. And if that fails, we'll go to the placeholder property. So that is how you think about designing the object repository. I hope that was clear. That will be all we will be covering as part of this demo lecture. You can download the sample code files used here from the links given below. If you have any doubts, you can contact me through email or call me up on my phone. The details are here. There is a direct link for this video if you want to download it. If you want to know about the upcoming batches, the schedules, etc., the URL is given here, or you can directly call me up. Hope you like this video. Have a good day.